Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone on Clubhouse, Facebook, and Instagram. So thank you so much for joining us. Today we've got Dr. Fareen Koorjee with us. She's going to be talking about the adrenals, and we apologize for the technical difficulties, but hey, that's what life is, and we just keep moving through, go through the technical difficulties. So thank you for everyone that has joined us. And you know, Dr. Fareen Koorjee has been a naturopathic doctor, as well as she's been practicing Ayurveda, and she'll also get into her bio a little bit later. But as a disclosure, whatever we do discuss here, please do talk to your doctor if there is something that you want to further, as this is just some overall information. Anyways, I'm Fatima.
I'm Fred.
I'm John.
I'm Dr. Fareen.
And we've got Dr. Fareen. So thank you so much for coming on. And if you can just quickly tell us what you do and why you do what you do.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a naturopathic doctor. And for those who don't know, naturopathic medicine bridges the best of conventional Western medicine with really the best of more traditional practices of medicine, more holistic medicine, and really addresses and looks for the underlying root cause of what's going on, so that we can actually heal the patient rather than just suppress symptoms. I got into naturopathic medicine because I just saw that there were gaps in conventional medicine. You know, there's a lot of good that conventional medicine does, and I want to acknowledge that, but there are some gaps in the way that they approach medical care. And my hope is that one day we can bridge that gap, and conventional medicine and naturopathic medicine can kind of work more together side by side, because I really think that's in the best interest of patients.
Love it, love it. And so can you tell us about the adrenals and why they're so important to our overall health?
Yes, the adrenal glands are two little glands that sit on top of the kidneys in your lower back. And they really form the foundation of health. They form the foundation of our immune system, and they form the foundation of all of our reproductive hormones and our thyroid hormones, so really all of our hormones. And when that foundation isn't strong, so when our adrenal glands become depleted over time, then building strong hormones or a strong immune system on top of that doesn't work very well. And so really working on that foundational support of adrenal health is really important. And the adrenal glands produce a few different hormones. They produce a hormone called cortisol that helps us to cope with stress. So as human beings, we've evolved to have short bursts of stress and to produce short bursts of cortisol, and that's really healthy. But in the modern world that we live in, most of us with work and school and relationships, and especially here in LA, the traffic and the noise and pollution, we're really chronically stressed all the time, even if it's a low level of stress. And so those adrenal glands are having to produce cortisol constantly throughout the day. And over time, they can become really depleted. They also produce a hormone called aldosterone, and aldosterone is a hormone that helps to manage our blood pressure and electrolyte balance. And a hormone called DHEA, which DHEA is a hormone that gets converted to estrogen and testosterone. And so as women, when we go through that sort of transition into menopause and our ovaries no longer produce testosterone and DHEA, or testosterone and estrogen, really, if we've nourished our adrenal glands from when we sort of first get our periods, in our early teens, then those adrenal glands can kind of take over, and we don't have the harsh transition that often women experience when they go into menopause.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Like, little, our adrenals, they're so tiny, as you say, And they have such a huge impact on our entire body, right?
Yeah.
And so what are one ways that we know that our adrenals are working, and how do they actually process do they process vitamins and minerals?
Yeah, so the adrenals, when they become fatigued over time, there are different parts of our health that they can affect. So I mentioned kind of the three main hormones that are produced by the adrenals. So aldosterone affects our blood pressure. And so often, I'll have women come in, and when I check their blood pressure, it's oftentimes on the lower end of the range, although it can be high with adrenal depletion. But for a lot of times with low blood pressure, you'll see symptoms of, when women get, or when anyone really gets up, if they're sitting or lying and they get up too quickly, they kind of feel lightheaded or might even sort of black out a little bit or see stars. Oftentimes that's caused by the blood pressure not being able to be regulated properly because aldosterone isn't being produced properly. And often one of the first signs that we have of some adrenal depletion. Cortisol is another hormone that's produced by the adrenal glands that helps us to cope with stress. So sometimes we'll see a decreased ability to cope with stress. So smaller stressors can have a more significant impact on us, mental, emotionally, because we're not producing enough cortisol to help us cope with stress. Cortisol is also a hormone that helps with the breaking down of sugars into the bloodstream. And so because cortisol is supposed to help us cope with stress, the sugars provide us with the energy to cope with that stress. So, if you're being chased by a tiger with that fight or flight response of stress, you need to have enough energy in the system to be able to run away or fight. And so cortisol breaks down sugar into the bloodstream. And often over time, with elevated levels of sugar in the bloodstream, women will see, and men as well will see, I see a lot more women than I do than men, so I talk more about women, but both women and men will see a weight gain around their middle, sort of around the belly. And that's kind of an indication also of adrenal depletion. And then feeling really fatigued. The hormone DHEA is a hormone that gives us energy and motivation and is that feel-good hormone that we produce by the adrenal glands. And so oftentimes we'll feel really fatigued when we have adrenal depletion. So those are the main symptoms that we might experience. The adrenals really produce hormones and help us cope with stress. They require vitamins. They don't really process vitamins, but they require certain vitamins in order to function optimally. So vitamin C and all the different B vitamins are really important in proper adrenal function. And there's certain herbs that help also to nourish the adrenal glands and to help us with adrenal depletion. So ashwagandha might be one that we might choose to help nourish it's a really nourishing adaptogenic herb that helps to nourish the adrenal glands. And so when I have patients who have adrenal depletion with thyroid issues on top of that, ashwagandha is often an herb that I'll choose. Sitawari is another one that's specific for when there's adrenal depletion with imbalance with female hormones. So women with infertility, women who are, have difficulties with PMS, going through menopause. Sitawari is a really nice, nourishing, adaptogenic herb. Rhodiola is another one that's kind of calming and nourishing. Ocimum sanctum helps to, if we're having any immune issues. And ginseng is another one that I sometimes choose. Now, ginseng is a really stimulating and heating herb, less nourishing for the adrenal glands. So if a woman's going through that transition, that hormonal transition into menopause, ginseng is not a great herb to choose because oftentimes women, as they go into menopause and their estrogen is dropping, will have a lot of heat in the body. They might get hot flashes. And so you don't want to choose herbs that are more heating because it may push that balance or that imbalance further.
Right. I have a question because like some of the things you've been mentioning is internal. We may or may not feel some of these, like they're all kind of we don't know if it's just a headache or we're just feeling tired for days on end.
Right.
What are some of the things that we know that you can honestly say, doing these things that we can control, like some lifestyle choices or some lifestyle activities, are going to affect our adrenals, whether it's positive or negative?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really great question. I love seeing women, especially young women in my practice, because a lot of times I'll have women that are sort of in their 40s and 50s that come in to see me because they're struggling with hormone dysregulation, or they're going to perimenopause and menopause, and they're seeing the symptoms then. But when I see women who are, in their teens and early 20s, I love it because we can affect the adrenal glands at that time to nourish those adrenal glands, so that when a girl or a woman gets into sort of their 40s and 50s, their adrenal glands are functioning and producing that DHEA, which then gets converted to estrogen and testosterone, the two hormones that drop in menopause, so that transition isn't as difficult. And the things that girls and even women can do to really nourish the adrenal glands, and men as well, is to find ways to manage stress. Because when we're stressed, the adrenal glands are having to produce high amounts of cortisol over a long period of time. It really depletes that cortisol and depletes the adrenal glands. And so I talk to all my patients about meditation and breath work, exercise, finding ways to process emotions that are stuck in the body, whether it's through counseling or therapy, whether it's journaling, whether it's spending time in nature. So finding healthy ways to process our stress is really important. Mental emotional stress plays a big role, but also physical stress plays a big role. So if we're over exercising, if we're not getting good quality sleep, so our sleep hygiene isn't good, that's really plays a big role in adrenal depletion. If we're getting too much processed sugars in the diet, that can affect adrenal depletion. If we're not eating breakfast, I know there's this big trend towards intermittent fasting. And the two guys that brought intermittent fasting to North America, because for North Americans, dinner is such a social and such an important time, and a time when a lot of families get together, they kind of shifted the window of fasting to be early. So you're fasting earlier in the day and eating your calories later in the day. And for men, what the clinical data is showing now that intermittent fasting has been around for a long time is it's not so hard on the hormones for men. But for women, absolutely, the clinical data is really showing definitively that for women, when we fast and don't eat breakfast in the morning, it really depletes the adrenal glands even more and has an impact on thyroid and reproductive hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And so eating breakfast and having some sort of protein for breakfast is really important. So I recommend that my patients have ideally 20 grams of protein a day. An egg is about 6 grams. So at least 10 grams, but ideally 20 grams of protein for breakfast every day. Eating regular meals and not skipping meals, eating your smallest meal at dinner and your largest meal at breakfast is really helpful. Not eating too much sugar or decreasing processed sugars in the diet and processed foods in general, that can stress the body as well. And coffee. So having coffee first thing in the morning is like giving a punch to the adrenal glands. Yeah, but I know, but the great thing is there's something that you can do to protect your adrenal glands if you are drinking coffee. So I don't like my patients to drink more than 2 cups of coffee a day. And when they're having coffee first thing in the morning, I don't, unlike alcohol, I'm not a big fan of alcohol because the processed sugars really in so many ways cause a lot of inflammation and cause the adrenal glands to become more depleted. But coffee, as long as it's not more than 2 cups a day, the way that you can protect your adrenal glands if you're drinking coffee in the morning, is to have a cup of hot water and lemon first thing in the morning. The hot water and the vitamin C in the lemon helps to protect the adrenal glands from the first dose of coffee in the system.
Since you said that, does it matter? Like, I do drink water right when I wake up, so that's I can
Perfect.
kind of also just to replenish myself through the night because I feel very dry, dehydrated. But I don't drink coffee on an empty stomach. What I do is like
Okay.
right now I'm enjoying a cup of coffee, but I've had
Yeah.
breakfast already, and this is kind of like my morning to noon kind of drink, and then I'll have it probably the rest of it, like the rest of it's in this mug. But I kind of baby it from like 9:30 to 12:30 kind of thing. So is that okay?
Right.
Or because I know like I heard
Yes.
drinking coffee or strong things for breakfast on an empty stomach is different than drinking it with food or if you've already had a meal.
Absolutely. Yes, it makes a big difference. If you've had a meal, that's also going to protect. Yeah, you're fine there. It's mostly just drinking the coffee on an empty stomach that's the issue.
Okay.
But no more than 2 cups is what I would recommend.
So what does the warm water and lemon, what does it do to the adrenal glands?
The lemon is high in vitamin C. And so, you know how I'd mentioned that the B vitamins and vitamin C is really important for nourishing the adrenal glands. And the warm water, anything that dehydrates the body is going to be really hard on the adrenal glands. So the warm water just helps to replenish. So yeah, you'll feel my patients. Oh, you know, when I see my patients, my first appointment is always a 90-minute appointment. And I do a really thorough intake to really understand what's going on and what the underlying root causes are for my patients. And so we talk all about bowel movements, we talk about exercise, water, we talk about about environmental toxins, because that plays a big role. Environmental toxins are going to really deplete the adrenal glands because they do create stress on the body. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday. So, if you have any mercury fillings, if you're getting drinking water that's in plastic water bottles or that has lead in it from the tap, using microwaves because that changes the molecular structure of food, exposure to mold, exposure to asbestos, anyone in the family that's smoking tobacco. All of these things can build our levels of toxins. And if the liver isn't processing toxins well and our exit routes of elimination aren't working optimally, then that can affect our experience of physical stress for sure on the body.
And if you wanted to, hear more about these toxins that we did talk about in our previous conversations, please do check us out on the Healthy Way Vibes on our Facebook as well as on YouTube. You will be able to find all of Dr. Fareen Koorjee's previous conversations. So, you can always catch up on those conversations as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, does it affect children? Do having that malnourished adrenals affect children as well, or is it just predominant in adults?
Yes, absolutely. If we're nutrient depleted, if we're in an environment where we're being inundated by toxins, if there's inflammation in the body, then absolutely it can affect children. But we see it more in adults, just because it's kind of has this additive effect. If we don't get enough sleep, that kind of throws the body out of balance. And the body is constantly, its job is to stay in what's called homeostasis. It's supposed to stay in balance. And every time we throw the body off balance, the body's job is to come back into balance. And, we don't get enough sleep and that throws the body off balance. And then it has to work to come back into balance. And we, eat too much sugar and drink too much alcohol, it throws the body off balance and we have to bring it back into balance. We get exposed, or, we smoke cigarettes and the toxins cause stress on the body that throws the body off balance and it sort of has to come back into balance. And the body has this kind of ability to come back into balance with a certain level of imbalance. And then it reaches a threshold where it's not able to quite come fully back into balance, and then it's not quite able to come back fully into balance. And when it reaches that threshold, that's when we start to see symptoms. And that's usually when patients are seeking the help of a healthcare professional. It's really when you see symptoms that you want to try and figure out what's going on. And in the culture that we're in, we're often told to push through the pain, and, even if we're feeling tired, be productive and maybe not get enough sleep. Or maybe it's just, there's just so much day you're not able to have a balanced lifestyle. And so even when we see symptoms, we're not listening to our symptoms. And so we're pushing past that, and the body becomes more and more and more out of balance. And so we mostly see that in adults, but I've absolutely seen it with children who have experienced trauma for sure. Yeah.
So it sounds like
One thing I didn't.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we lost you.
One thing I didn't mention. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
A bit of delay.
Yeah, okay. So one thing I didn't mention when you asked about the causes also of adrenal depletion, there's something called the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. You may have heard about it. There's a lot of clinical data that's being sort of looked at on that. And if you Google it on the internet, you'll see lots of information on it. And it's the connection between the adrenal glands and our brain or our nervous system. And so the nervous system plays a big role in controlling what's going on in the adrenal glands. And so our bodies are either in one of two nervous systems. We're either in what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest, digest, and heal nervous system, or it's in the sympathetic nervous system, which we talked about, which is the fight or flight stress response. And really, we're meant to be in that parasympathetic nervous system most of the time, but most of us are in the sympathetic nervous system, and that sends a signal from the brain to the adrenal glands to constantly put out more cortisol, and that really depletes the adrenal glands. So that connection is really important in understanding sort of underlying causes with the adrenal glands.
So it's interesting that you say that. So then I know, when we're in trauma, we're more in sympathetic state.
Yes.
So is that true also then with the adrenals, that when we're in trauma, we've got more stress added to our body?
Absolutely, yes. Any sort of stress on the body, whether it's mental, emotional, or physical, so even like getting a virus or a bacterial infection or cancer, those are all stresses on the body, and they're all going to deplete the adrenal glands. And that's why there's so many people that are adrenally depleted. And the adrenal glands have what's called a circadian rhythm. So we see kind of like a diurnal pattern of how cortisol is produced during the day. So really, cortisol is supposed to be highest in the morning. And so when I'm testing adrenal function, I always have my patients do their blood work first thing in the morning between 8 and 10, because it gives me the best indication of what their adrenal glands are doing. And it should really be highest in the morning, and then it drops during the day. So first thing in the morning, it gives you the energy and the motivation and to get up out of bed and to get things done. And then it should drop during the day and be lowest before you go to bed, so that you feel tired and you're able to fall asleep easily. The problem is when we become adrenally depleted, and because of the lifestyle that we have, if we're going to bed late, or we're not eating breakfast and we're eating a large meal at dinner, that sends a signal to our microbiome. The way that we eat and how we eat and what we eat sends a signal to our microbiome. And our microbiome sends a signal to the brain, to a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that tells the brain whether it's day or night. And based on whether it's day or night, our body knows whether to produce more or less cortisol. And so if the body thinks that it's day when it's really night, then it's going to flip our circadian rhythms so that we're producing less cortisol in the morning, so we feel tired and we don't feel like we want to get out of bed. And then it increases for some people the cortisol at night, and then they don't feel like they can fall asleep. And so that can cause a lot of sort of turmoil in the body. And so those flipped circadian rhythms can be really problematic for a lot of people. The other reason why that's really important is because there's a opposite relationship between cortisol and an antioxidant melatonin. Melatonin is a really powerful antioxidant and really important for the body. It plays a role in cancer formation, but it also plays a role in increasing or decreasing our risk of Alzheimer's. So cortisol has a circadian rhythm of being highest in the morning and lowest at night. And melatonin's rhythm is the total opposite. So melatonin is lowest in the morning and should be highest at night. And when it's lowest in the morning, it sends a signal for us to feel energized and feel like we can get things done. And when it's highest, it puts us into a deep sleep. Now, if your circadian rhythm is flipped and at night your cortisol is high, then your melatonin is going to be low. And the problem with that is when melatonin is low, it doesn't allow your body to get into a deep enough sleep. And when you don't get into a deep enough sleep, if you don't produce enough melatonin, and if your room isn't completely dark, so if you don't have good sleep hygiene, melatonin doesn't get produced well, and then you don't get into a deep enough sleep. And it's only when you get into a deep enough sleep that a signal gets sent to the brain to shrink the brain. And when the brain shrinks, there's fluid from your spine called the cerebrospinal fluid that flushes out the brain. So whatever toxins, plaques, buildup, any sort of plaques that have built up in the brain that can predispose us to dementia, Alzheimer's, get flushed out. And this is really important because if this doesn't happen, then it predisposes us more to Alzheimer's. And there's 3 conditions for women that we're more predisposed to as we go into perimenopause and menopause, and especially postmenopause: heart disease, osteoporosis, and Alzheimer's. We see that a lot as women go into postmenopause. And so this, what's called glymphatic flushing, which if you Google glymphatic flushing, you'll see lots of information on it. This glymphatic flushing is so important. And that only happens when you produce enough melatonin. And you only produce enough melatonin if you're getting good sleep hygiene, and if your circadian rhythms are balanced and healthy, and your cortisol levels are following their sort of healthy diurnal rhythms. Yeah, and there's some ways. There's some ways.
The 2 words I'm hearing, like the 2 words I'm hearing, I keep hearing is yes. Balance and syncing. Like they got to sync and also balance, because I was hearing like the melatonin is high in the night. It should be. So I shouldn't say night. It should be high when you're ready to go to sleep. And then your cortisol level should be high when you wake up. And that, if that isn't kind of at either ends of the spectrum of whatever day it is, because I know there's some people that work night shift. So the body has accustomed to kind of flipping it around 12 hours. But if those are off, that can really mess someone up, because if you have high cortisol and then high melatonin, you're wanting to go to sleep, but then you have high energy. That can really conflict as well.
Yes, it can be really difficult. Now, the thing is that what more and more clinical data is showing is that when we are living in line with the rhythms of nature, so when we go to bed when it's dark and when we're awake during the day, that is when our bodies are the most healthy. It's when we're producing the best amounts and balanced amounts of growth hormone, which affects all of our hormones at night, is really when we're living in with those cycles of nature. When we're eating seasonally, when for women especially, when we're menstruating with the cycles of nature and really with the cycles of the moon. So really you are most reproductively fertile and your hormones are most healthy when you have your menstrual cycle with the new moon and when you ovulate with the full moon. And there's something called, I know this is a little off topic, but it's something that a lot of women are really interested in. And so I'll just say it really quickly. I guess it's a little bit on topic because the hormones really are affected by our adrenal glands. But there is something called seed cycling where you can use different types of seeds at different types of different points in the lunar cycle to reset your menstrual cycle. So between the new moon and the full moon, in order to reset your hormonal cycles, you want to have 1 tablespoon of pumpkin seeds, 1 tablespoon of ground flax seeds, and 1 tablespoon of chia seeds, and a tablespoon of a really good quality fish oil, because these seeds and the fish oil provide the body with the building blocks to make the hormones that are important in that follicular part of your cycle between the new moon and the full moon. So there's certain minerals that are really important and certain fats that are really important. And they also feed the microbiome, and the microbiome plays a big role in the production of our hormones. And then between the full moon and the new moon, you want to have 1 tablespoon of sesame seeds, 1 tablespoon of sunflower seeds, and a little bit of borage oil, because that supports the more luteal phase of your cycle. And so, and I've used this, it's such a simple thing, but I've had patients come to me. I actually had a patient last year who was 47 years old, had gone through in vitro, couldn't get pregnant. We worked on her thyroid because that was a little out of balance, and we did seed cycling, and she got pregnant, and she had a baby girl last August.
Wow.
And she's now 8 months old. Yeah, and so
That's
it works
amazing.
really well for it works really well for fertility, and it works really well for women who are going through into that transition into menopause as well. It's super powerful, and it's really easy to do.
Wow.
Always seeds.
I know, it's like, wow.
They work amazingly well. If you give your body what it needs to do its job, so you're basically giving your body the building blocks. Cholesterol is the backbone of all of our reproductive hormones of estrogen and testosterone. So the fish oil and the borage oil gives the body those building blocks, and then the seeds give us the minerals that we need. So when we give the body the building blocks to do what it needs to do, the body has a powerful ability to heal itself. If you cut yourself, you just have to give your body the right environment. You keep it clean, you keep it dry, and the body heals itself. And my philosophy and my approach to care with my patients is the same. I use supplements to provide the body with what it needs to begin to learn to do what it needs to do. I am not a doctor that prescribes supplements long-term. It's just to give the body what it needs to do its job. So for example, I'll just give you a quick example, but with digestive enzymes, sometimes my patients will come to me on digestive enzymes, and they're taking them because they're not digesting proteins or fats very well. And digestive enzymes are great for that. They're so much better than if you're on a pharmaceutical, supplements are better, herbs are better. But the problem with digestive enzymes is you're going to be tied to those digestive enzymes forever, because they're not teaching your body to produce the enzymes that your body needs to produce. If you give, it depends on the situation, but for example, bitter herbs like gentian are really nice because they retrain the body. They retrain the pancreas to produce the enzymes. They retrain the stomach to produce hydrochloric acid, so that it retrains the body to make the enzymes and the digestive juices that are needed to digest the food. So it's just one example of the way that I sort of practice, maybe a little bit differently than some other integrative doctors.
Wow. This has been very, very informative. We are actually at our time.
Okay.
I know, it goes by so quick.
We need a part 2 and 3 on this.
I know, no kidding.
I know, right?
Wow.
Because we haven't even gotten to, I know that we were concentrating on the balance and stuff and the women's side, but I'd like to hear kind of how, because you mentioned that with the adrenals, that women, when they start
Yeah.
getting their menstrual cycle in their teens. I mean, for guys, it's got to be different. It's got to be like that
Absolutely.
factor of when it comes in. That maybe we can cover that next time.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing just so that it's a little more balanced on the side of men. The two main hormones that are produced by the adrenal glands are cortisol and DHEA. Cortisol is what's called a catabolic hormone. It breaks things down. And DHEA is an anabolic hormone. It builds things up. So generally we tend to have our systems tend to be more building when we're younger. And as we get older, and our adrenal glands become depleted, things tend to break down more. And for men, and DHEA, it gets converted to estrogen, which is important for women, but also for men, and also for testosterone, which is really important for men, but also for women. And so it really helps in that if we keep those adrenal glands really well nourished, it helps in that production of testosterone for men as well. So, but there's lots more to say about that. We can talk maybe we'll do a men's health segment.
So I think maybe that's our next topic, men's health segment.
Sounds good.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, there we go. We just came up with our topic right on the spot. So Dr. Fareen Koorjee will be in next month. So she'll be in on the 18th of June. And so we will be talking about men's health. And so then the men don't feel left out. And then yes, and then this is actually a good segue because on the 18th, we're going to be talking about omegas and how they affect our health. On the 20th, we have Rebecca Borges, the plant doctor, coming in. So she's going to be talking about different plants, herbs, gardening, vegetable gardening versus fruit gardening or plant gardening. And then we're going to be talking about mold on the 25th. And then on the 27th, we've got Fawzia Bhatia. She's going to be talking about neurology and how that affects our overall health. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in below and we will get back to you as soon as possible. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do follow us on all of our platforms. We are the Healthy Way Vibes everywhere. We're easy to find. So you can easily find us and follow us so you can stay tuned with all of the latest and greatest interviews and always stay connected. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.